Lena liked quiet mornings. That's why she always came to the small coffee shop near the beach. It wasn't fancy, but it had a warm feeling. The wooden chairs creaked a little. The bell above the door rang gently. And the owner, Mr. Raymond, always gave her a smile. She sat near the window with a hot cup of coffee. The sun touched her face through the glass. She closed her eyes and listened to the soft music in the background. No one knew her real story. To them, she was just a quiet woman with short hair and strong shoulders. She looked calm, maybe a little sad. But nothing special. Lena was special, though. She had spent years in dangerous places. She had been a Navy SEAL trained for war. She had jumped out of helicopters, crawled through the mud, saved lives, and sometimes ended threats, but now she was trying to live a peaceful life. The bell above the coffee shop door rang again. 2 men walked in. Lena noticed them immediately, not just because they were loud, but because of the way they moved, like they were looking for trouble. They weren't old, maybe late 20s. One had a tattoo on his neck. The other wore sunglasses, even though they were inside. They looked around, laughing, talking too loudly. Then they saw Lena. She didn't look up again, but she could feel it, their eyes on her. They whispered something to each other, and then walked toward her table. Mr. Raymond looked nervous, but he didn't say anything. The shop had only a few other people, a couple in the corner, an old man reading a newspaper. No one did anything, they just waited. "Hey, beautiful," the man with the tattoo said. "Mind if we sit here?" He didn't wait for her answer. He pulled a chair and sat down. The other man stood close behind her, blocking her way out. Lena kept calm. She didn't show fear. She didn't speak. She just looked at the coffee in her cup. "Too good for us?" the man asked, his voice turning colder. Lena slowly looked up. Her eyes didn't blink. She stared right at him. There was something in her look that made him pause. But only for a second. The man behind her leaned down. He whispered near her ear. "We don't like rude girls," he said. Then he pressed something hard and cold to the side of her head. A gun. A real one. The room went silent. Even the music stopped. No one moved. The old man dropped his newspaper. The woman in the corner covered her mouth. Mr. Raymond disappeared behind the counter, calling the police, but Lena stayed still. She didn't panic, she didn't cry or scream. She just sat there, breathing slowly. Her heart rate didn't rise. Her training kicked in. "Now you're listening," the man whispered again. "Say something, girl." Lena turned her head slightly, the gun still touching her skin, and then she spoke. Just one sentence, soft, calm, and deadly serious. "You picked the wrong target," the man laughed. But it sounded unsure. The guy behind her shifted his weight. Just a little, and Lena felt it. The moment. The mistake, the opening, she didn't move yet. Not in this part of the story. But something had changed in the air. Everyone could feel it. Something was about to happen. Something they would never forget. And the 2 men who thought they were in control, they had no idea who they were messing with. Because Lena wasn't just a woman with coffee. She was a storm waiting to break. The coffee shop was frozen. Not a single person moved. It felt like the whole room was holding its breath. The man's hand pressed the cold gun tighter against Lena's head. His lips curled into a fake smile. But his eyes were full of cruelty. He thought he had power. He thought Lena was scared, but he had no idea. He didn't know what those calm eyes had seen, what kind of storms she had walked through. "You picked the wrong target," she had said, softly like a whisper between 2 heartbeats. But those 6 words made the air feel heavier. The man blinked just once, confused by her calm. This wasn't how his victims usually reacted. He was used to fear, trembling hands, begging voices, tears, but this woman, she didn't even flinch. Behind her, the second man chuckled. "She's bluffing," he said. "She thinks she's tough." But his voice cracked a little at the end. Even he could feel something was off. Something strange about her stillness. Like a lion sitting quietly before the pounce, Lena slowly moved her eyes toward the man in front of her. He was close, too close. She could smell cheap cologne, gunpowder, and the sweat of someone who'd done this before. But she didn't look at the gun. She looked at him, right into his soul. "You ever pull that trigger before?" she asked. Her voice was steady. "You ever see someone bleed out on the floor?" The man's grin faded. "Shut up," he said, pressing harder. But his hands, they were shaking just a little, she noticed around them. The cafe was a mix of fear and silence. The young couple clutched each other. The old man under the table whispered prayers, "Mr. Raymond hadn't come back from behind the counter. But Lena didn't need help, she never had. The man behind her finally spoke louder. "Give us your bag," he said. "Now." Lena didn't move. "You think this is a joke?" He shouted. "We'll end you right here." A few people cried softly. A phone buzzed on the floor. Maybe the police had been called. But Lena stayed calm. Every second they wasted gave her more control. More time to read them, their angles, their weaknesses, their fear. She moved her hand just slightly. Not toward her bag, not toward the gun. Just toward her cup of coffee. She took one last slow sip. And then she set it down gently. The man with the gun couldn't take it anymore. He slammed his hand on the table. "Don't move," he yelled. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Lena looked at him, cold and calm. "No," she said. "You don't know who you're dealing with." For a brief moment, their eyes locked again, and in that moment he saw it, not fear. Not panic, but a storm. A controlled, trained, patient storm ready to break loose. And she was still waiting, waiting for one small mistake. One twitch, one shift in balance. She knew it would come. People like them always thought they were in control. Until they weren't. The second man paced behind her now, nervous. "Let's just take her stuff and go," he muttered. "No," the first man snapped. She's playing games, but Lena wasn't playing. She was calculating. She could already see the move in her head. Step 1, disarm the first man. Step 2, use the table for cover. Step 3, take down the second with one strike to the knee and one to the throat. 15 seconds, maybe less. That's all she needed. The man's hand twitched. He adjusted his grip, and that was it. The moment had come, but she didn't move yet. Not here, not now, because Lena understood something they didn't. This wasn't just about her. There were innocent people in the room, and she never left anyone behind, so she waited. She let them feel like kings for just a little longer. Let them dig their own graves with every second. The fear around them was thick, but her mind was clear. Her body ready, her heart was steady. The gun shook slightly. The man's eyes darted around. Even he knew something wasn't right. And that's when Lena gave him one last chance. "One last quiet warning, walk away," she said. "This is your last breath of freedom." But the man didn't listen. He didn't know he had just crossed the line. The point of no return. Lena didn't blink. She sat still like a statue. Her shoulders relaxed, her breath steady, but inside her mind, gears were turning like a war machine. She had entered what soldiers call the zone, where time slows down and everything becomes clear. The man still had the gun pressed to her head, but now he wasn't so sure of himself. She could feel it, his wrist trembled slightly. His voice had stopped shouting. The second man behind her had stepped back, unsure. They had expected fear, but what they got was silence, deadly silence. That silence wasn't weakness, and it was warning. Lena had been trained in 23 different types of hand-to-hand combat. She had disarmed armed enemies underwater, blindfolded. She had survived ambushes in deserts and jungles. But this moment, in a small coffee shop with sunlight on her face, felt more dangerous somehow. Because innocent people were here. Because this wasn't a war zone, but it was about to become one. The old man under the table coughed. A cup fell off someone's table and shattered. The sound rang through the room like a gunshot. The man with the gun jumped. His grip tightened. That was his second mistake. Lena didn't move, not yet. She needed one more shift, down one more second. Her fingers curled slightly around the edge of the table. No one noticed. Not even the man with the gun inches from her face. "You think you're better than us?" he growled. Lena met his eyes and said nothing. Because words were useless now. Words couldn't stop what was coming, only actions could. The second man behind her pulled out the knife. A hunting blade, long, sharp, ugly. "Let's just finish this," he said. "Take her stuff and go." Lena tilted her head slightly. Not in fear, but like she was listening, measuring distance, sound, angles. She could hear his footsteps, feel his breath behind her neck. She could even tell how sharp the blade was by the way it cut the air. One more step, she thought, just one step closer. The man with the gun leaned in again. "You're about to die," he said. His words stank of pride and fear. But he didn't know. He was standing too close to the storm. And the storm was waking up. Lena closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one, and in that moment, her mind went back to a mission in Syria, to a burning building, to her teammate lying wounded behind her, to the sound of gunfire, to the smell of smoke and blood. and to the calm she found in that fire. The calm that saved them all. She opened her eyes again, still calm, still steady, but now the storm was fully awake. The man behind her made his move. He raised the knife, but that was his third and final mistake. Lena saw it all. The flick of the wrist, the forward motion. Before anyone else in the cafe even knew what happened, she acted in one sharp motion. She grabbed the wrist of the man with the gun, twisted it hard on a pop, a scream. The gun clattered to the floor. She kicked the chair out from under the second man. He lost balance, crashed into a table. Lena grabbed the gun, flipped it, and pointed it at both of them. But she didn't fire, she didn't have to. Both men were on the floor, one holding a broken wrist, the other gasping for air. The knife spun across the floor and stopped under the old man's table. Silence returned to the room. But this time it was filled with awe. Nobody had seen her move. It had all happened in under 5 seconds. 5 seconds of chaos born from complete calm. Lena stood tall, not shaking, not sweating, just alert, watching. She kept the gun pointed at the floor now, not as a threat, but as control. The young couple stared at her with wide eyes. The old man slowly peeked over the table and gave a thumbs up. Mr. Raymond reappeared from behind the counter, his phone still in hand. "I called the police," he said. Voice shaking, Lena gave him a small nod. The two attackers didn't try to run. They were too hurt, too shocked, too broken by someone they thought was weak. Lena put the gun down on the table and stepped back. Her body returned to stillness. But something had changed in the room forever, not just because she stopped a crime, but because everyone there had seen something rare, true strength, quiet, patient and unstoppable in the chaos. It was over for now, but the story was just beginning. The room was frozen again. But this time it wasn't fear, it was shock. Everyone had just witnessed something unbelievable. A quiet woman in a hoodie had just taken down 2 armed men. In seconds, without a single scream, Lena stood tall beside the table. The gun lay untouched now. She didn't need it anymore. The danger was over, at least. That's what people thought, but inside her, something had shifted, something deep, something from years ago. It started with a sound, not from the coffee shop, but from her memory. The sound of a bomb exploding near her unit, the screams of her team in the dust, the heavy weight of a wounded soldier in her arms, the mission she almost didn't come back from. She blinked and the cafe faded for a moment. The walls melted into desert heat. The tables became sandbags. The smell of coffee mixed with the smell of blood and fire. Someone in the shop moved a chair. The wooden leg scraped across the floor, loud and sudden like a gunshot. That was the snap. Not the sound, but the switch inside her. Her body tensed again, her breath shortened. She was no longer in San Diego. She was back in the war, the old man noticed first. He saw her eyes, wide, distant, lost. "Like she wasn't in the room anymore, miss," he said softly. But she didn't hear him. Mr. Raymond stepped forward slowly. Lena? Still no answer. She was locked in her own mind, not afraid, not panicking, just gone. The 2 attackers moaned on the floor. One tried to crawl away. That small motion brought Lena back. Not fully, but just enough. Her eyes snapped to the crawling man. She moved fast, too fast, grabbed his ankle, twisted hard. He cried out in pain. "Don't move," she said. Her voice flat, dead flat like a machine. Everyone in the cafe backed away. They weren't afraid of her, but they were afraid for her. Something was wrong. Something in her was cracking. The young woman from the corner, the one who had been crying earlier, stood up slowly. She walked carefully toward Lena. She didn't shout, she didn't rush. She just spoke gently. "You're safe now," she said. Lena didn't respond. "You're not in danger anymore." Lena blinked again. Her hand still gripped the man's ankle. But her breathing started to change, deeper, slower. The spell was breaking. "You're home," the woman said. That word hit something, home. A place Lena had almost forgotten. Her grip loosened. The man rolled away, coughing. Lena stood up slowly. She touched her own face. Confused, her hands were shaking. She hated that. They never used to shake. Not in the field, not even under fire. "I'm sorry," she whispered. She looked around. Everyone was staring, not with fear, but with something else, respect, sadness, gratitude. "You don't need to say sorry," the young woman said. "You saved all of us." Lena's knees felt weak. She sat down slowly, back in her chair by the window. The sun still touched her face, but it felt different now. Warmer somehow, gentler. Sirens echoed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. Police rushed in with hands on weapons, ready for battle. But there was no battle left. Only two broken men on the floor, and one quiet woman who had already won. The officers moved fast. Handcuffs, questions, shouts, but Lena stayed still. She answered softly when asked, gave her name, her ID, showed them her old Navy SEAL badge. The officers didn't ask more after that. They just looked at her differently. One of them even saluted. She didn't salute back. She just nodded, tired. They took the two men away, loaded them into the back of a police van. The crowd outside clapped. Someone had filmed everything. The video was already online, already viral, but Lena didn't care. She wasn't thinking about fame. She was thinking about her heartbeat, about the snap, and how close she came to falling back into the dark. Mr. Raymond brought her a fresh cup of coffee. On the house, he said with a nervous smile. Lena took it with both hands. She didn't drink it, she just held it, letting the warmth remind her where she was. Here, now, alive. The sound of police sirens slowly faded away. The coffee shop returned to a strange silence. Chairs were broken, cups shattered, people still whispering. But Lena sat still near the window, holding a warm cup between her hands. She looked calm again, but inside something was not right. Her mind wasn't in the cafe anymore, it was miles away. Thousands of miles and in a desert far across the ocean, under a burning sky filled with dust and smoke. It began as a soft flash, then a smell, the sharp smell of gunpowder. Then a sound, the deep boom of an explosion. And just like that, the memories pulled her in. She was no longer in San Diego, she was back in Afghanistan. It was night. The stars were bright, but the air was filled with danger. Her team moved through a narrow alley, silent and alert. Lena was in front, her eyes scanning the rooftops. Every shadow looked alive. Every sound could mean death. Then the radio crackled. Possible hostiles, east side, her commander said. Lena gave a hand signal. Her team took cover behind walls and sandbags. And then it happened, the ground shook. A bomb exploded near a truck. The flash blinded her for a second. The sound tore through her chest. When she opened her eyes, she saw her teammate. Eris, he was down, bleeding, his leg twisted in a way no leg should twist. Stay with me, she shouted, her voice echoing in the night. She dragged him behind a broken wall. Bullets hit the dirt beside her. She didn't stop, she couldn't stop. Harris looked at her, pain in his eyes. Leave me, he said. She shook her head. No one gets left behind, she whispered. That was the rule, that was her promise. She pressed her hand on his wound. Blood soaked her gloves. She called for air support. But the radio was dead. She was on her own. Minutes felt like hours. She held his hand. Trying to keep him awake, he smiled weakly. Still think you can outshoot me? He joked. Even dying, he made jokes. Lena smiled back. That was Harris. Brave till the end, but the end came too fast. His hand slipped from hers, his breathing stopped. And the night went silent again. Lena sat there, covered in dust and blood, her body shaking. But not from fear, from rage, from helplessness. She wanted to scream, but instead she picked up her rifle and kept fighting, because that's what soldiers do, they fight. Even when their hearts are breaking, the memory shifted again. Now she was in a helicopter, her hands still red. The medic tried to clean them. She stared out at the desert below, the wind loud in her ears, but she heard nothing. Not the medic's voice, not the engine. Just the sound of her heartbeat, slow and heavy. One beat for every life she couldn't save. The flashback ended as suddenly as it began. The sound of a coffee cup clinking brought her back. She blinked. The desert faded. The cafe returned. Mr. Raymond stood beside her. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Lena nodded, but her eyes were far away. Just old memories, she said softly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You did what you had to, he said. But Lena didn't answer because she wasn't sure anymore. Had she done what she had to? Or had she become something she never wanted to be? She looked at her reflection in the cafe window. For a second she saw the soldier, strong, fearless, unstoppable. Then the image changed. She saw the woman, tired, lonely, haunted. She touched the glass, whispered to herself, I promised I'd stop fighting, but deep inside, she knew she couldn't. The fight never really leaves a soldier. It hides inside, quiet and patient, waiting for the next battle. Even if that battle is inside their own heart. A little girl came up to her table. She was about 8 years old, holding her mother's hand. Miss, she said shyly, "You're the lady who stopped the bad guys." Lena smiled gently. "Yeah," she said, "I guess I did." The girl's mother smiled too. "My husband is in the Navy," she said. "He says people like you are heroes." Hero? The word stung. Lena had been called that before, but she never felt like one. Not when she remembered all the faces she couldn't save. Still, she smiled for the little girl because maybe heroes weren't people who didn't break. Maybe they were the ones who broke and kept going anyway. As the mother and daughter left, Lena whispered under her breath, "Harris, I hope you see this outside." The sun was setting, turning the sky golden red. She finished her coffee, stood up slowly, and for the first time in a long time she felt something like peace. But she also knew peace never lasted, and the world had a way of testing those who fought hardest for it. Lena didn't mean to become a story. She didn't want fame, attention, or headlines. She just wanted coffee, peace, and silence. But the world had seen her, and the world wasn't going to stay quiet about it. The video was already online. A shaky phone recording from someone hiding behind a chair. It showed everything, the gun, the knife, the takedown, and most of all, it showed Lena. Calm, sharp, powerful. A real-life warrior hidden in plain clothes. By the next morning, it had 10 million views. By the end of the day, it was everywhere. Unknown woman disarms gunman like a trained soldier. Coffee shop heroine takes down 2 criminals without breaking a sweat. Is she military? Who is she? News vans parked outside the coffee shop. Reporters waved microphones at customers. They wanted interviews, reactions, quotes. They wanted drama, excitement, headlines. Mr. Raymond looked stressed. His quiet shop had become a tourist spot. People came not for coffee, but for Lena. They took selfies near the window where she sat. They asked for her name, her number, her story. But Lena didn't return, not that day, not the next. She stayed home. A small 1-bedroom apartment near the edge of town. No pictures on the walls, just books, a bed, and a punching bag in the corner. Her phone buzzed constantly, unknown numbers, reporters, old teammates. Everyone wanted to talk, she didn't answer. She sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. Watching the video for the first time, she saw herself then calm, fast, cold. She looked like a ghost with purpose. She didn't feel proud. She felt empty. She didn't want to be a symbol. She didn't want to be famous for surviving danger. She had survived worse things no camera ever captured. Then the calls changed, not just media, but people she used to know. One call came from Texas, her old Navy SEAL teammate. "Torres," she answered that one. "Damn, Lena," he said, his voice full of both pride and concern. "I always said you were a legend." She smiled softly. "Didn't mean for people to find out," she said. Torres laughed. "Too late for that. The world's already built you a cape." "I don't want a cape," Lena said. "I just want to breathe." He paused. "I get it," he said, "but sometimes people like us, we don't get to stay in the shadows forever." She ended the call and stared at her phone. The world had decided she was a hero. But heroes have stories, heroes answer interviews, go on TV, smile for pictures. Lena didn't want that. She didn't even smile often. By the 3rd day, someone found her name. A journalist dug up old military records. Now the headlines were louder. "Meet Lena Marlowe, former Navy SEAL turned civilian warrior. Decorated female SEAL stops armed robbery, alone. Trained killer or quiet hero." Who is Lena Marlowe? The questions bothered her more than the praise. Because people didn't understand. They asked how she stayed so calm, how she moved so fast, what her secret was. They didn't ask about the nightmares, the flashbacks, the friends she lost, the guilt she carried like a stone in her chest. One morning, she opened her door to find a camera crew waiting. "Just one interview," the woman said. Lena shut the door without speaking. She stood there, back against the wood, eyes closed. The silence inside her home felt like safety, but it was crumbling. Later that day, she went to the beach. She wore a hoodie and sunglasses, but someone still recognized her. A group of teenagers whispered, then walked over. "Are you the Navy lady from the video?" one of them asked. Lena hesitated, then nodded. "Can we take a picture?" Another one said. She forced a smile. "Sure." After the photo, one girl said, "You made me feel safe again." Lena's smile dropped. Those words hit deep because all her life, Lena had been protecting others, but no one ever said that back to her. Not until now. That night she sat on the sand. Alone with the waves and the wind, she thought about everything. The fight, The video, the headlines, the people, and one question haunted her. What if being seen wasn't the enemy? What if sharing her story could help others like her? Not just soldiers, but survivors, fighters, silent protectors. Maybe the media storm wasn't just noise, maybe it was a signal that the world still needed people like her, not just for fighting, but for healing, for showing what courage looks like when the battle is over. Lena didn't know the answers yet, but for the first time she didn't feel like running. Not from the world, not from herself. 3 weeks later, Lena stood in front of a courthouse, wearing a plain black jacket and jeans. No medals, no uniform, just a calm face hiding a storm beneath. The courtroom was quiet when she entered. Cameras had been banned inside, but curiosity was still thick in the air. People wanted to see the woman from the video, the coffee shop warrior, the calm killer. The media had painted her like a comic book hero, but Lena wasn't here to play a role, she was here for truth. The 2 men she had disarmed sat at a table nearby. Handcuffed, heads low, they looked smaller now, not like monsters. Just broken men with broken choices, the one who had held the gun. His name was Reggie Knox. The other, the one with the knife, was Devin Tate. Lena watched them not with hate, not even with anger, but with a kind of quiet sadness. The judge entered, people rose. Lena kept her hands behind her back, her posture straight. Old habits from the military never really faded. When it was time to speak, the prosecutor went first. He showed the video. He explained the charges: armed assault, attempted robbery, public endangerment. Every word felt like a sharp needle in the room. Then Lena was called to the stand. She stepped forward, not nervous, but not fully at ease either. The eyes of the court turned to her. Every movement, every breath felt heavier under their gaze. "Can you describe what happened that day?" the lawyer asked. Lena nodded. Her voice was soft but steady. "They came in, they looked around, and they chose me," she said. "They didn't know who I was. They thought I was weak." She paused. They were wrong. Some people in the court smiled, some nodded. But Lena didn't tell it like a hero. She told it like a witness, clear, honest, without pride. Just the truth. When she finished, there was silence. Even the judge leaned back, thoughtful. Then something strange happened. The defense lawyer stood up and said, "My client, Mr. Knox, would like to say something." Everyone turned, surprised. It wasn't common, especially in cases like this. But the judge allowed it. Reggie Knox stood, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked at Lena, then down at the floor. His voice was shaky, unsure. "I didn't know who she was," he said. "I thought she'd scream, maybe cry. I was trying to scare someone, that's all." Lena didn't respond. She just watched, calm but focused. Knox kept speaking. "But the way she looked at me, like she already knew everything I was going to do." He shook his head. "I've never felt fear like that before. Not from a gun, not from cops, not from anyone." He looked up slowly. She didn't even raise her voice, and I felt like I was nothing. The courtroom was still. No one interrupted. Even the judge seemed surprised. Then came the final words. "I'm sorry," Knox said. "Not just because I got caught, but because I picked the wrong person." He turned his eyes toward Lena again. "You could have killed me, but you didn't." He swallowed hard. "You're not just strong, you're human. And I didn't see that until it was too late." Lena stayed silent. Not because she didn't care, but because there was nothing else to say. Devin Tate, the man with the knife, didn't speak. He kept his head low, but Lena didn't need his words. His silence was loud enough. The judge gave the final sentence. Both men would serve prison time. But with mandatory counseling and rehabilitation, it wasn't just punishment. It was a chance to change. After the court ended, people tried to talk to her. Reporters waited outside, but Lena walked out the back. She didn't want the lights, the questions, the noise. She just wanted air. She sat on a bench near the courthouse garden, closed her eyes, breathed in the smell of flowers and cut grass. She remembered what Knox had said. "You're not just strong, you're human." That sentence stayed in her mind. It meant more than the apology, because being strong had always been easy for Lena. But being human, that had always been the hard part. A small boy ran past her, laughing. His mom followed behind. Smiling, Lena watched them, and for a moment, she let herself smile too. Not because she had won, but because she was healing, slowly, piece by piece. The courtroom didn't give her closure, but it gave her something else. A reminder that even people who do wrong can feel regret. And sometimes that regret is the first sign of change. The coffee shop looked just like it always did. Same wooden chairs, same tiny bell above the door, same smell of fresh beans floating in the air. But for Lena, everything felt different. It had been 1 month since the day it all happened. Since the gun, the knife, the takedown. Since the world saw her in action. Since people started calling her hero, and still, that word didn't sit right in her heart. She pushed open the door gently. The bell rang. Soft and sweet. Heads turned, but no one clapped. No one screamed. People just nodded. Respectfully, some smiled, some whispered. But no one bothered her. Mr. Raymond looked up from the counter. When he saw her, his face lit up. "Well, if it isn't our quiet storm," he said. Lena smiled. "Just here for coffee," she replied. "Nothing more dangerous than caffeine today." He laughed and handed her the same order, black coffee. "1 sugar on the house," he said again. She nodded in thanks and took her usual seat by the window. The sunlight touched her face the same way it did that morning. But her heart wasn't heavy this time. It was quiet, not empty, just peaceful. She looked around the room. A young mother was feeding her toddler near the corner. A college student typed on a laptop. An older couple shared a muffin. Everything looked normal, and maybe, just maybe, Lena was starting to feel normal too. She took a sip of her coffee, closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she wasn't thinking about flashbacks, or regrets or courtrooms. She was just here. Then she heard a soft voice. "Excuse me." She opened her eyes. A young girl, maybe 12 or 13, stood beside her table. She wore a purple hoodie and held a notebook close to her chest. Lena smiled gently. "Yes? Are you the Navy SEAL lady?" the girl asked, nervous. Lena nodded slowly. "I am." The girl took a deep breath. "My name is Riley," she said. I watched the video, the one where you stopped the bad guys." Lena waited. Riley looked down, then back up. "My older brother was in the military," she said softly. "He didn't come back." Lena's smile faded into something more serious. "I'm sorry," she said. Riley nodded. "He was always brave like you." She paused. "After he died, I was scared all the time. But when I saw what you did, I wasn't scared anymore." Lena didn't speak. Her throat felt tight. Not from pain, but from something deeper. Something healing. Riley opened her notebook and showed Lena a drawing. It was simple. A woman standing tall in front of 2 shadows. Behind her, small figures were hiding and safe. It wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. "I drew this for school," Riley said. "We were supposed to draw someone who made us feel safe." Lena stared at the picture. She didn't see herself, not at first, but then yes, it was her, calm, strong, protecting others. Not as a soldier, but as a shield. She blinked a few times and smiled. "Thank you, Riley," she said softly. The girl nodded. Then she said something Lena would never forget. "You didn't fight because you wanted to win," she said. "You fought because you didn't want anyone else to get hurt." That one sentence felt like someone had reached inside her chest and healed a broken piece. "That's what my brother used to say too," Riley added. "He said real heroes don't chase fights. They carry peace into war." Lena stood up slowly and crouched so they were face to face. She gently placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. "Your brother sounds like someone I would have been proud to serve with," she said. Riley smiled wide. Then she turned and walked back to her mom. Lena watched her go, and for the first time since everything happened, she truly smiled. Not for the cameras, not for the courtroom, not even for herself, but for the little girl who reminded her why she fought, and who she really was beneath all the armor. She sat back down and looked out the window. The sun was rising higher. The world kept turning. But something had changed. Something small but real. Because the lesson wasn't about being tough. It wasn't about moves or training or medals. It was about why she stood up that day. And why she'd do it again. Not for glory, not for revenge, but for peace, for protection, for the ones who couldn't protect themselves. And in that moment, Lena Marlowe, the quiet woman with storm blue eyes, finally believed what everyone else already knew. She wasn't just a soldier. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a protector, and to someone out there, she was the reason they felt safe again.